Welcome to Business Analyst Guru. Thank you very much for all your support that you have been providing through your comments, likes, subscribes, and shares that you have been providing. It has been quite a journey over the year that I have been putting out these videos for your benefit. I have received scores of not only the comments but also emails and telephone calls from the subscribers across the world. So I have received emails from United Kingdom, India, and other countries associated with these videos that I'm putting out. I do try to come up with more and more videos now on for the specific topics that you guys are requiring more assistance with. So keep sharing, keep commenting, and definitely keep liking. The topic for discussion today is Agile. So there are several questions that you may be encountered with regarding what are the specifics of Agile that you know from your past project. What are the pros and cons that you have learned from the projects that you have executed? Now, you might think there are no disadvantages to Agile. It is the best possible choice in the market, but we will learn about how to address providing the cons of Agile without tripping anyone's heart in terms of persons or people who have been using Agile for a long term and have been very well versed with the advantages of them to overlook the disadvantages that could be possible. So let's begin. What is Agile? Agile is a multi-iterative life cycle. What do I mean by that? Multi-iterative life cycle is a way by which the project is broken up in several smaller pieces. So how do we do that? So let's assume that we have to create a large website. The website has 12 web pages that are going to be part of the whole flow. Now, in an agile environment, you are going to break the whole project down in much more smaller pieces. Let's say we are going to work on one page at a time. And let's assume that the iteration is going to be completed in a period of a month. So that's where Agile comes in, where at the end of the month, there is always a deliverable that the end user could use and provide its feedback on. So that at the end of the whole Agile, of all the sprints, you're getting a product that the customer is well versed with and has used and provided feedback on. There are no surprises. At the end, you practically have worked on it several iterations and are coming up with a product which is much more conducive to the customer. Alright, so multi-iterative life cycle. There are various versions of Agile that could be implemented. Scrum is one of them. I am experienced in Scrum, so I would be talking more to it. Others, there are extreme programming, there is Kanban, which is also getting popular and being used in the market. But I would say around 80 to 85% of agile projects are implemented in Scrum, as that is one of the most popular ways of implementing agile. Within Scrum, each iteration is called a sprint. A sprint is the initiation of one iteration and then completion. At the end of a sprint, there is a end product or a piece of your project that would be delivered to the customer so that he could use it and tell you what his feedback is on that specific piece, right? So that's how it becomes much more useful, as the customer has constant feedback before the actual end of the whole project. Unlike waterfall, where the customer has zero visibility, in agile you have maximum visibility. Every 4 weeks, every 2 weeks, every week, depending on the length of the iteration that the customer chooses, he would get an end product. Although it might not be extensive, although it might be just one small piece in the puzzle, he would still have that visibility, which is extremely essential from customization of your project. How are we going to break that whole thing up? In Agile, you write user stories. User stories are a way of which you are going to provide the requirements. There are three important contents of a user story that you have to keep in mind. A, what is the role which is going to execute that specific user story? Second, what is the feature that is going to be executed within that user story? Third, what are the benefits that one is going to derive from that user stories? If you take care of all these three, each user story is a compact piece of a feature that is going to become an executable piece of code at the end when the project goes live. Now, these user stories are kept in a collection called as a backlog. There are different types of backlog that we would like to talk about. The first is the product backlog. The product backlog practically has all the user stories, all of them, not only the first sprint, the second sprint, third sprint, but the whole 9 yards when it comes to the complete set of user stories put in the product backlog. So it's just a logical grouping of all the user stories put together. Beyond that, there are two additional set of backlogs. Usually it is either the release backlog or the sprint backlog. A release backlog is more like a collection of multiple sprints. Let's say if you have monthly sprints, a release is more like a collection of 2, 3, 4 sprints together and treating it as a release. Now, why would we want to do that? The idea is sometimes in Agile, the product that is coming out at the end of every sprint is so tiny, minuscule, or small, it would not make sense for the user to have a go at it. Which is why we collect 2 or 3 set of these inputs or features, put them together as one release, and then provide it to the customer. So a release is going to be a collection of multiple sprints, but at the end of the day, the point that we're trying to do is compile a way by which the user stories could be prioritized and assigned to a specific sprint. As soon as we get to that, that's when you will have a plan chalked out, where you would know within sprint 1, I'm going to do user story number 5, 6 and 7, whatever it is. And so on and so forth for all the sprints. So it is crystal clear to the customer what feature is going to come out in which sprint. So that's how we are going to execute the different backlogs, where the sprint backlog would contain the user stories that are provided for that specific sprint. The release backlog is a compilation of multiple sprints, so basically it would contain the user stories for sprint 1, 2 and 3 if that is part of the release. So that's how you would distinguish between the three backlogs. Now, an important activity from perspective of sprint planning is prioritization. How are we going to take care of that? Prioritization is basically a way by which we are going to assign a level of importance to each user story. It is usually done in conjunction with the product owner providing us the information about how important or relevant each feature is to that individual. We would like to treat or provide these importance so that we could execute or complete these user stories in that order. We would want to make sure the most important and the most relevant user stories get executed in the first few sprints itself. If there is a risk of complexity, we would want to take a stab at the most complex piece of user stories up front so that we know exactly what is the level of details that you're going to need for the following sprints. Now, the prioritization activity is also based on the estimations that are going to be provided by the developers, the testers, and the business analysts for the collection of the requirements. So, depending on the number of hours and the level of priorities that has been provided, we are going to now sync up and see what is the bandwidth that is available for each sprint, and then keep adding the user stories till we reach the realm where there is no more room for an additional user story to be taken care of. So that's how we are going to take care of. Now, the prioritization could be provided in multiple ways. Simpler way, provide a rating scale where 5 is the most important, 1 is the least important, and that's about it. There is also a way by which they give it through a Moscow rule. Moscow is an acronym: must have, ought to have, should have, could have, would have. Basically, the same representation of the 5-point scale, providing it in a more elaborate manner. There is also another way to provide prioritization, which is through story points. Story points are nothing but a numerical value that is associated with each user story. The higher the value, the more relevant it is. Now, you could give it between 0 and 10, or you could use a Fibonacci series to provide it more perspective or more relevance. So that's how you're going to execute and complete the prioritization piece. You have completed the user stories, prioritization's done. You already have a plan in place in terms of where and how the user stories are going to be executed. Now we are in sprint 1. How are we going to manage the execution of the actual sprint? You know that there are 3 user stories that you want to complete within the first 4 weeks. You know the exact planning of how much time are you as a business analyst going to take to execute the requirement elicitation, how much the developer is going to take, how much the tester is going to take. But how do we keep a track within that four weeks whether we are on time or not? It's a very, very important task because of the short duration of a sprint. It is very easy to deviate from the timeline and miss the deadlines that are important to us, which is why in sprints there are daily scrum calls that are taken care of. It's basically a 15-minute meeting where the whole agile team is present there. The product owner is also present, but he is made not to share his thoughts about the particular happenings. The main crux of the matter for that specific meeting is each individual is responsible to answer 3 questions. What did you do yesterday? What are you planning to do today? And are there any roadblocks to execute the work that you have today? So it is status update, what happened yesterday. It is planning update of what is going to happen today. And it is a problem update or obstacle update if there is any, so that some team member is going to know of how to help you to make sure that you can complete the work that is planned for today. Now these updates are going to be listed out in not only basically a verbal nod or status, but also a numerical value of how many hours worth of work got completed. For each user story, you would have a way by which you could do that. Where let's say a user story had 8 hours worth of work pending for yesterday because you completed say 5 hours worth of work, you're going to reduce that number and provide the more updated number that user story number 243 needs 3 more hours worth of work, which I'm going to execute today, plus another user story that I'm going to be finishing or starting to work on. So this is compiled by a CSM or a Scrum Master. Scrum Master's main responsibility is to take care of this over a period of time where he executes everything and takes care of from scratch. So a scrum master is going to keep a tab on how many tasks are executed as per plan. He creates a burn down chart. A burn down chart is a graphical representation of what was the work that was required to be executed yesterday, what got accomplished, and if there is a delta, let's say 100 hours worth of work should have been finished yesterday, and if we did only 80 hours, it gives him a way by showing that there is a delta between the planned and the actual executed, so that he could keep a tab, and if this delta keeps increasing, he needs to step in and provide feedback on the same. So that is how the whole agile works. What are the advantages and disadvantages for agile? One of the most important advantage is the high amount of visibility that agile presents to customers. This visibility provides enormous amounts of opportunities for the customers to show any deviation from the requirements that they think we may be going through. That provides lot of opportunities for taking corrective actions and bringing the project back to the focused area. Another big advantage is we spend least amount of time taking care of things like documentation, which are not very productive oriented. It is very light on documentation. It wants you to create only enough documents that are necessary for the smooth running of the project. Whatever is necessary for the developer to have to make sure that he completes his work today. Some of the disadvantages: it is one of the most complex methodologies that is out there. If a team is not well versed with the ways in which it can execute the work, it will not succeed, because the functionality is so difficult to keep tab on and keep pace with the extreme expedited ways of executing the development. Another disadvantage: it is extremely expensive. You need resources that are extremely well versed. These resources are few and far between. If you are going to hire a complete new set of team, it doesn't only require resources to hire them, but also to manage them and maintain them is going to be a little bit more expensive than compared to the other aspects. So these would be the couple of advantages and disadvantages that you would want to speak about. Now you have to think about it from this perspective, that no solution or no methodology is a way by which it is 100% match for any problem or a solution. A project that requires constant monitoring of requirement, or a project where the customer knows that the requirements are going to change over a period of time because of regulatory changes, because of market changes, economical changes, whatever it is, would definitely need something like agile. Because in a waterfall environment, if a requirement changes after the requirement has been provided approval, regardless of whether it changes in the first month or closer towards the mid of the project, there is no opportunity for it to be incorporated in the current set of development that is going on. Whereas something like agile would be able to take it in its stride. Of course, it's going to take more time, but it is much more adaptable to those situations than any other methodology out there. Thank you very much.